Hi, I'm Bonnie, an alcoholic. And I've been through this process with a Loving Big Book Step Study sponsor and God. And continue to take personal inventory. And when I'm wrong, I promptly admit it. So I came into AA in 1986. And it took me a long time to get here. So much denial. I just couldn't believe that I was an alcoholic, and if I was, I'm not going to admit it, for sure. But I came in to Al-Anon, actually, in 1984, because my father died. He was an alcoholic, and, we all suffered from my father's drinking. And then my husband got into AA, and so I thought, well, maybe I should go to Al-Anon. So I was in Al-Anon for a while, but, actually I was in the right church, but I was in the wrong pew. And I, had to switch over to AA. And I remember I was on vacation when I went to my first meeting. And it was, that night we drove up to Vermont, and on the way up, I said I'm only going to have 3 drinks. And one before dinner, one during dinner, and one after dinner. And so I did that. But then when we got to our destination, I drank the rest of the bottle that was up at the condo. And so, I just couldn't stop drinking. I just couldn't stop drinking after that first drink. And I always thought it was maybe the 5th drink that got me, was my problem. Not the first. So I woke up that morning and there was a little bit left in the glass. I remember that. And I looked out over the mountain. I remember it was just as clear as a bell. And I had a choice. Maybe I could have a little bit of what was left. But all of a sudden, it said, Bonnie, you're an alcoholic. It's as clear as a bell. So I wasn't going to say anything to my husband about it, And so when I went downstairs, he said, oh, we'll have a great day. We'll go do this and that, and then we can go somewhere for lunch. You can have a beer. And so I said, well, I don't think I'm going to drink today. He said, well, would you like to go to an AA meeting? I really wasn't ready for that. So in my clear thinking, this is how clear my thinking was always when I was drinking. If I said no, he was going to know I was an alcoholic. If I said yes, then he wouldn't know I was an alcoholic. That was my process. That was my best thinking that got me here. And so we went to an AA meeting that day, and there was a woman that told her story, and I couldn't believe she said all these things about herself to all these people. I couldn't believe it. And so I just sat there. I was just stunned. And they went around the room introducing themselves, and I couldn't even say the word alcoholic. I just said, I'm Bonnie. Like they didn't know I was an alcoholic. So, and that happened for the first 5 meetings. I couldn't say the word alcoholic. I didn't want to be an alcoholic. And because we were visiting and I was still in Al-Anon, I had to go home and tell all my Al-Anon friends, now I'm in AA. And I thought, oh, this is going to be really hard. So I told my Al-Anon sponsor when I got home, I said, I'm not going to the Al-Anon meeting today. I'm going to an AA meeting. I'm an alcoholic. She said, oh, this must be a red letter day for you. what was that? You know what I mean? A red letter day. And so I went to my first meeting, and it was at the Mack Center in Leominster. And was a huge, huge meeting, and it was very smoky. I sat in the back of the room, and I was scared to death, and I was hoping nobody would even notice me. And the guy in front of me, Irish Pat, I remember, he turned around and he said to me, "Welcome to AA." I was mortified. How did he even notice I was sitting here? You know, I wanted to be anonymous. I didn't want anybody to notice me or talk to me. I was just so mortified that I had to be there. And I got an AA sponsor, and she was wonderful, and I had her for about 9 months, but she was only a year sober more than I was, and she really, we wobbled along with each other, but there really wasn't much recovery. I had stopped drinking, she had stopped drinking, and I got another sponsor, and she had been in AA for many, many years, maybe 30 years, and she was an old principal, and yeah. And, you know, my friend and I used to whine to each other how bad life was and how our parents treated us, at least this guy treated us. So when I started talking to her, she started looking around the room like she could care less what I was saying. I wanted her to get right into it with me. She'd just look around the room. Well, I'll see you at the next meeting. So I'd go to the next meeting, and, you know, I just kept on doing that. And, you know, I stayed sober, and I was sober for 14 years. And I thought that I was doing really great. I really thought I was. I had put down all my substances, and, but I had this anger, this resentment that I just couldn't get rid of no matter what I did. No matter what I did, I couldn't help the anger that would pop up in my head if somebody cut me off. Like, that guy was doing this personally to me, you know? It had nothing to do with me. It had everything to do with him. He wanted to get there in a hurry. But I thought it was all about me. And I remember my husband said, "You know, Bonnie, you think the world revolves around you." I said, "No, I don't. You know, I don't think the world revolves around me." Oh, I used to hate that. One thing I used to get if I had been drinking too much, and he was in program, he would put this book on the bedside stand. How annoying. How annoying was it that you wake up with a hangover and you got this book? And I was supposed to understand what was in this book with a hangover. So I would read some of it, and I think, this doesn't pertain to me. Selfish? I'm not selfish. I'm a great mom. I'm a nurse. I do things for my neighbors, which would be bring over my bottle of wine. That was what I would, do for my neighbor, and we would drink together. And so I wasn't selfish. I didn't have any idea what was in this book. I read a couple of the stories about the guy, he cheated on his wife, he crashed his car, he was in jail. I had none of that. None of that. What I had was I couldn't stop drinking after the first drink. That was what I had. I was an alcoholic. And I thought of as insane? No, I didn't think I was insane. I thought everybody else in AA was insane after listening to their stories. but I wasn't insane. And when I told my story in AA in the beginning, I sugarcoated it real well so nobody would really know how bad it really was. I was like the alcoholic who took out his slippers after retirement. I had stopped drinking during my pregnancies. So how could I be an alcoholic? But I had a friend that showed up with a bottle of wine when my kids were 2 and 3, and I hadn't been drinking, and I was off and running. I was like the guy with the slippers. That I could stop drinking for 4 years. How could I be an alcoholic? You know? And so I could always relate to this guy. And that could be me today if I didn't continue to take personal inventory. And when I was wrong, promptly admitted it. So it took me a long time to understand what this book was all about. Even when I started Big Book Step Study, I remember, at the church, I would just sit there and listen to people, and I just couldn't believe the honesty. But I was frightened because I felt like I was at the end of my spiritual rope. And I really wasn't close to God. I thought I was close to God, but I wasn't. And so one of my friends said to me, well, why don't you come to Big Book Step Study on Saturday morning? And I said, well, I'm very busy on Saturdays. She said, you're not that busy. So that's when I started going to Big Book. And I remember I used to sit next to Joe, and I didn't get it. I didn't get what everybody was talking about. But I knew that there was honesty here. And I marveled at the people and their spirituality after they had done the process. And, it took me about 4 years to complete the process, and I had put it down when my sister passed away. That was a hard time in my life. I was angry about that, too. And there was other things going on in my life. And, I had just put it down. Instead of keep writing, I just put the writing down. I just couldn't seem to handle it. And I finally finished, and I gave it away. I wrote everything down. I gave it away. I did my amends. That was really difficult. One of my first amends was I had to tell one of my neighbors that I took more of her medication than she offered. And when she wasn't there, I took more. That was a hard amend to make. So, I continued to make the amends, and the spirituality came. And it wasn't quick, but it was slow. And, I really had to live a spiritual life. So that's what it says in step 10, continue to take personal inventory. When we were wrong, promptly admitted it. We commenced this way of living as we cleaned up the past. So I cleaned up the past, but I had to continue to live. But I had to continue to live according to the Big Book, and not according to my way. Because my way got me here, to Alcoholics Anonymous. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. So what was here's an example. I just came back from California, and I have a daughter-in-law. She is one of us, but she doesn't go to meetings. She maybe went to 3 meetings in her whole life. And I'll tell you, the poor girl is off the hook. Really off. She works full-time, she has kids, she's moving. That's the reason why I was there to help her. She was just really off the hook. And I wanted her to treat her kids the way I think that a mother should treat her kids. You know? But she wasn't doing it. And she wasn't moving in the way that I thought she should be moving. She had everything stacked up on the dining room table. Where were we going to eat? You know? Jesus. The whole thing drove me nuts. But what I have learned is my selfishness. What was my selfishness? I wanted her to clean off the dining room table so we could eat. What was that? Unreasonable expectations. I had unreasonable expectations that we were going to eat in the normal, traditional way. Not with a plate on our lap, on the couch, or wherever we could sit. So the dishonesty was unreasonable expectations, thinking I was better than and she was less than. And I told myself that I could judge her and that I was playing God. The mother of the year, right? Me. Drank with my kids around. So the dishonesty is just that. The self-seeking part is, I didn't drink about it. I had inward seething about it. I had mental retaliation about it. I wanted to take everything right off the dining room table. The worst part was I gossiped about her to my husband. And that's a big one. God does not want me to gossip about her. She's probably doing the best she can. Oh, and she should go to meetings. Right? The big judge, you know. Where was I fearful? I was basically not getting what I wanted when I wanted it. I wanted everything to be like Leave It to Beaver household, and it wasn't that way. So she was doing the best she could. The other part was when I was wrong, I promptly admitted it. In that I was gossiping about her, and I was carrying on in the car about her to my husband. When I realized that, I had to promptly admit it to my husband that I'm so sorry that, I'm gossiping about her. I shouldn't be doing that. And he said, you're right, that we shouldn't be gossiping about her. So, when I had to do all that writing, when I had to give it away and tell her what I was doing and reading it and everything, over and over and over again, I was able to go right into this situation when I finally realized what I was doing and do a turnaround. And how I was able to do it so quickly is because I did all the work. I knew when I was wrong, because we do know when we're wrong, it doesn't feel right anymore. It doesn't feel right to gossip about other people. And the hardest amend for me to make is to my husband, and it sticks right here. And I started off with, perhaps you're right. Perhaps you're right. And now I say I'm sorry. I don't go to bed angry and not talking for a couple of weeks because I didn't get what I wanted, or he said something to me I didn't like, or he was interfering with my drinking. I didn't like that. I didn't like getting this big book put on my bedside stand. It enraged me. How dare him? So today I don't have to do that. And it says that we are, It is easy to let up on our spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. And that today can happen. Things are going okay, and I can just say, oh, God is, I'm just doing wonderful, and then, there's no problems here. And as soon as I think that way, God comes in, he puts something in my way. And that's when I have to turn back to him. That doesn't mean I don't say my prayers in the morning. But they can be short, and I'm not taking that quality time with God. And, a lot of times my feelings get hurt, and I don't know what to do about it. But, it's that resting with God and really feeling the hurt, really feeling that pain, and asking God to remove it. That's when that's when I'm at my best. That's when I'm at my best. So I don't need to go off and run around and gossip about people and judge people and be full of pride and ambition. That's craziness. And I want to live like that today. And so that's what this Big Book Step Study did for me. It brought me closer to God. That's what this whole book is about. Put the alcohol down and get closer to God. And I couldn't get closer to God if I was drinking. So every day we carry the message and the vision of God into all our activities. So if I'm really working this big book, then, I'm able to be of service to other people. And that's what this is all about, too. Putting the drink down, getting closer to God, and helping another suffering alcoholic. Because they are suffering. They're really suffering. So I'm so glad to be here today, sober. My anniversary was this past week. And I think about where I was 32 years ago, when I got sober for the first time, when I got sober. And I remember how green the leaves were on the trees. Geez, where have I been? The leaves are on the trees, they've been on the trees for years. But I'm saying, oh, look at the green leaves, aren't they pretty? But I wasn't insane. I wasn't insane. So I'm glad to be here. I'm so glad that Kathy asked me to speak today. If you're writing, keep writing. And that's it. Thanks.